Emerging Tech Summit. For this, we have our moderator, Mr. Sarat Chandra, who is President GBA India and advisor Earth ID. Mr. Chandra, he's a startup mentor, emerging tech evangelist, and ecosystem builder. He advises across sectors with a focus on blockchain and fintech. He drives engagement with governments, policymakers, and industry association. May I request Mr. Chandra to come up on the dais, please? We have a keynote speaker, Dr. Onkar Rai, Director General, Software Technology Park of India. May I request you to come up on the dais, please, sir? We have our special addresses, Sri Saurav Gaur, IAS, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. May I request you to come up on the dais? Mr. Anil Kumar Jain, CEO, National Internet Exchange of India. Can I have you on the stage, please? The other rest of the speakers, we have Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar, President, Aeris Communication, Mr. Sanjay Bharti Kumar, Group General Manager, TCIL, and Mr. Ankur Malhotra, who is Director, Mars, and we have a launch by him too. Thank you. Now we can start a session. I would request our moderator to take charge of the session.
Thanks for the introduction, and I think it's one of those times where we look forward to meeting in person again. Right. And to begin today's session, I would like to state one simple fact that right policy intervention and technology collaboration can be drivers of change. And let me illustrate this further by saying that if I look at the events from 25th March last year, when both Niti Aayog and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, they issued guidelines about telemedicine. And over a period of 1 year, we have eSanjeevani, which has more than 1 million consultations so far. And this has been a game changer with the National Digital Health Mission in place. I think right policy intervention and with adoption of technologies like cloud, eSanjeevani has been a game changer in remote patient delivery and healthcare services. With this given context, I would like to start today's discussion and start by asking the first question to Mr. Saurav Gaurji and get his views on what MeitY has in terms of objectives and vision for emerging technologies. Recently, MeitY released a paper on blockchain. We have AI mission paper as well, right? So what are MeitY's plans for the next 5 years or so?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chandra. First of all, I must thank the organizers here for putting this beautiful exhibition together. The real is coming back to reality and it actually seems unreal as of now. We are so used to talking across screens that for a change, getting out and speaking to people on a live platform is a different experience now. To the point that what are the kind of policy levers, and I think I'll just take it off, that are being put in place to support the emerging tech ecosystem. I believe that we are looking at, just like COVID has been a great accelerator of many things, we are looking at what is our vision in the Ministry for Digital India 2.0 and what role will emerging technologies have to play in that entire Digital India 2.0 program. And apart from, I'll talk about the emerging technologies, but I see 5 very important strands that are going to emerge out, or 5 pillars for our policy interventions moving forward. The first one is in digital economy, where we see that what we would have aspired otherwise, although the economy probably has taken a kind of there's been a pushback, but we are emerging back stronger. There has been certain momentum to the digital economy, and our aspirations for digital economy to become from 10% of the total economy presently to 20% in next 5 years is something that has become very, not just aspirational, but also achievable. So we talk about a $5 trillion trillion economy by say 2025 or 2026, we are hoping to have $1 trillion of digital economy in next 5 years. And I believe a lot of it is going to come because of the new efficiencies or the new engines of growth that are going to come because of the emerging technologies. The second part is in the digital infrastructure that is getting built. So we have already some very strong artifacts of Digital India. We talked about the National Digital Health Mission. There is going to be emergence of, so both digital infrastructure and digital services combined together, emergence of very strong public digital platforms. So we have a strong UPI platform, for example. That is something which is an envy of the entire world. And what we've been able to put together as the services that have come on top of the UPI and the NPCI layer and data exchange that has been made possible. I believe all these financial fintech services that are able to grow on top of that is a direct impact of that. Similarly, in the digital health mission, we will see lots of not just telemedicine, but teleconsultation, telediagnostics, and lots of other things developing. And they'll be using different artifacts of emerging technologies such as AI or virtual reality or machine learning and these kind of things very strongly. Then third thing is, I think on digital security, we are becoming increasingly cognizant of the fact that while we have a very strong digital identity and we live in a digital world, digital security is important. And that is where the policy levers in terms of whether it is the personal data protection bill, which should come out soon, and then in form of a legislation, and the non-personal data regime, through which again there is public discussion going on, will happen. And I'll conclude by saying that all of these will get amplified by adoption of emerging technologies, and ministries coming out with strategy papers. We had a national strategy paper on AI. I'll be happy to talk more about that. We came out with a national strategy paper, a draft one on blockchain recently. There is going to be a national program on AI also really soon. And all of these things, along with the fact that apart from Ministry of Electronics and IT, Department of Science and Technology, for example, has a national mission on integrated cyber physical systems, which is looking at both basic fundamental research as well as applied research and setting up technology incubation hubs and technology centers, incubation centers in 25 centers or 25 national institutes of excellence. Say an IIT Kharagpur has a center, a TIH, a technology incubation hub on AI ML. IIT Delhi has on something else. IIT Bombay has probably on machine learning. So very strong adoption, research-based work and also industry collaboration on emerging technologies is happening through Ministry of Electronics and IT, through Department of Science and Technology, and also by Niti Aayog and all the departments coming together. So there is a whole of government approach towards adoption of emerging technologies, proliferation of them, and making them available not just for government but also for the overall ecosystem.
Thank you, Mr. Gaur. Now, I would like to request Dr. Rai to share his views on how STPI is driving collaboration with all ecosystem players, with startups, and how we are planning to become the next software product nation, and the role of emerging technologies and COEs in general, sir. Your views, please.
Thank you, Sharad. It's my proud privilege to be here. First of all, I must congratulate the organizers for organizing such a fantastic exhibition and for such a forum where you have pulled up the experts from various fields. I'm glad to be here. On the question of what STPI is doing in this regard, I must say that I would quickly take you through the evolution that India has made in terms of IT industry. We know that starting in 80s, the IT industry started emerging, and we have seen that very quickly the IT industry evolved, and it has now become $150 billion industry, which has moved up the value chain right from delivering the services to its customer at the bottom level of the value chain. Now it's a R&D as an outsourcing industry, and it implies about 4.37 million professional at all levels of value chain. And therefore, when we talk about the landscape in emerging technology, I must say that the credit goes to IT industry of India, which has created not only a body of knowledge in terms of doing things in the emerging technology, creating products around it, solving the problem that world faces today, delivering services to its customers, customers in Europe and US, creating products for them. And that is how this whole ecosystem that is already present in India has led to the emergence of a very vibrant technology startup ecosystem. We know that India has emerged as third largest technology startup ecosystem in this country, and during this lockdown period itself, India added 12 unicorns, rising the number to 38 unicorns, which is projected to be 52 unicorns in almost all emerging technologies. And therefore, I must say that when we look at the successes of IT industry, emergence of IT startup ecosystem in India, coupled with the policy that Joint Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Saurabh Goel, have just explained, that the kind of policies that the government is taking to promote the entire ecosystem, wherein we are promoting not only the government, we are promoting the businesses, and we are, most importantly, we are creating a platform, a collaborative platform where the stakeholders could work together, could create a platform and enabling environment where we provide the plenty of abundance of mentor pool, which is mostly drawn from the IT industry, the investors which are also again drawn from mostly from the IT industry, who have now retired and are actually working as mentors and have created India Angel Network or the Entrepreneur, we call it TIE. And therefore, the entire ecosystem which needed the government support is already on table. And therefore, if you talk about the kind of work that STPI is doing, STPI is creating Center of Excellence in collaborative manner under the leadership of industry leaders, veterans, and therefore drawing mentors from the industry, allowing the leadership of these incubators or Center of Excellence by the able hands, experienced hands of the industry leaders. We have created such a platform where we have been able to launch 13 Center of Excellence in the fields like blockchain. Sarath, so blockchain, we just launched it yesterday. We call it Apiary in Gurgaon. And this Center of Excellence in blockchain is actually having partners like IIT Delhi, Government of Haryana, of course, funded by Ministry of Electronics and IT and Software Technology Parks of India. It is being led by the industry leader Pankaj Thakkar, and it draws the mentors from all across the industry, and they are the people who are actually trying their hands on the industry. And therefore, when we look at the blockchain technology, which is being seen as the enabler in India, which can transform the education sector, agriculture sector, governance, we know that government of India has resolved to take the farmers' income to twice by 2022. We know that the technology like blockchain, IoT, AI, and such other technology, emerging technologies, have a big role to play. We have already created a Center of Excellence in IoT Open Lab in Bangalore, in Meditech in Lucknow, animation, gaming, AI and computer vision in Hyderabad, Center of Excellence in FinTech in Chennai, Center of Excellence in Industry 4.2, I mean efficiency augmentation again in Bangalore, Center of Excellence in AI and such other emerging technologies in Mohali, Center of Excellence in autonomous, connected, electric and shared vehicle in Pune. To just name few, I must say that we have already planned to open more than 25 centers of excellence. Invariably, each center of excellence that we are creating, we are acting as an enabler, as a platform where we are bringing the experts, the meaningful people from all across the sectors, so that a very able hand can be brought together to lead the entire movement. And the kind of successes that we are getting, the kind of response that we are getting, we are very encouraged, we are very inspired, and we foresee that in times to come, owing to the strength that India has, obviously, the kind of talent we have, the kind of IT industry of India we have, and the kind of success stories that have been created in past, like India Stack, or emergence of digital payment ecosystem, or Aadhaar kind of digital biometric identity. We are the world leaders in these sectors. It all was all powered by the IT industry, by the talent that we have. I am very glad, I am very sure, and I must inform the audience that STPI is spearheading the government's resolve to make India and transform India, evolve India towards a software product nation. We want to take India to as a software product industry worth 80 to 90 billion dollar by 2022 from today's 9.2 billion dollar. And therefore, this tenfold growth has to be powered by these emerging technologies, by young boys and girls. I would also add that while doing so, we are trying to ensure that the young boys and girls from all across the country inclusively and equitably join this whole movement. And that is why we have also come up with Next Generation Incubation Program, which is available for Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities of this country, smaller towns of this country. And we have found very encouraging response. I must say that the young boys and girls who are very close to the problem, who are very close to the society and working in diverse field, they are having a quest, a kind of knack to solve the problem. And therefore, while doing so, we are trapping the talent from all across the country, making them available a kind of platform where they can try their hands with emerging technology, convert their ideas into product. I must again say that the Ministry of Electronics and IT has created a Ministry of Electronics and IT Startup Hub. This MSH is overarching umbrella which is connecting all these incubators together, and therefore is allowing the best practices, standards to be shared across the board. It is also allowing collaborations with the foreign players, international players, and therefore this is bilateral and multilateral provisions are also in place. With these few words, I must say that in future we are very optimistic that we will be able to lead this country towards becoming a technology product industry, product nation. Thank you very much for upholding this.
Thanks, Dr. Roy. And I would like to bring in Mr. Anil Kumar Jain to share his views on the impact of technologies like 5G on emerging landscape and how it's going to revolutionize other industries like, say, healthcare or mobility. Your views, please.
Thank you, Sharad. Sharad Chandra ji, Dr. Omkar Rai, Saurabh Gaur ji, Mr. Bharti, Dr. Bhatnagar, and other panelists, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I am thankful to Convergence to allow us to come here and share our views. It brings old memories when Dr. Prem Bahal used to be here, and we used to discuss a lot on the policy discussions on telecom and also the environment which is happening today. Coming to the 5G, I'll take back you to the technology discussions which is happening today. Technology, it has emerged over the years, and I want to take you back when in the very old age, the first technology which we personally feel was important for the mankind was innovation or invention of iron and invention of fire. And then, the whole world started changing. During our times, we have seen that introduction of computer as a technology in 1950 has brought a lot of changes. And today, internet and broadband, which has been introduced in India in 1985-86, is what is the reigning technology today, and all other technologies are basically getting around that internet, including 5G and 6G, which are going to come. There is a discussion going on what Dr. Omkar Rai has also said on various technologies which are emerging around internet. For example, artificial reality, virtual reality, IoT, artificial intelligence, machine-to-machine learning, and blockchain, which has come recently. I personally feel that there is no conflict in these technologies, and all these technologies are complementary to each other. And at this stage, we have to bring those technologies as an integrated part for the benefit of industry as well as for the individual. Coming to 5G, what Sharad has said, I think the country is waiting for 5G for long. There are several operators in the world which has already implemented 5G in various parts of the world, and the results are quite encouraging. I personally feel that more than advantage to an individual, where he is going to or he or she is going to get a high-speed internet and broadband usage in the country for 5G, the major advantage of 5G are going to be the industry. It means building industry 4.0, what we are talking, is the future which we have to take forward with 5G. So we can see that production will go up at least 5 to 6 times. Whatever time the productions are taking, whether they are in agriculture or they are in metal industry or they are in chemical industry, that is going to reduce, and it is going to be a very cost effective for all of us. The experiment which are going on right now on the 5G applications which are relevant in India has been taken up by various academia as well as taken up by various OEM which are going to supply 5G in the country, including Chinese manufacturers and people like Ericsson, Nokia and Samsung. I think that discussions is going on, and we are able to provide applications which are very relevant to we Indians, and we hope that we should be able to fulfill the dreams of we Indian to bring more and more people to the state of internet. Nixie, which I represent, is a internet infrastructure company to the nation. We started our journey in 2003 with Internet Exchange. At that particular time, even the officers in DOT or in TRI who actually initiated, and they approached Department of IT, which is now Department of Electronic and IT, they were not convinced whether it was a role of a Internet Exchange which is required at that particular time. Because effectively the internet got introduced in this country in 2000, not in 1995-96, because at that particular time even the 2G got implemented in 2005-2006, and landline internet introduced in the country in January 2005. After that, we saw that a lot of internet service providers, the data centers, as well as for content delivery networks, they started sharing information using Internet Exchange platform. And now, I must inform you that foreign currency, which used to go out of the India because of international bandwidth, has been reduced from 100% to 15% because of Internet exchanges. Latency as the final outcome to the broadband users have come down, and latency means the experience to the customer has gone up very well. So after that the journey started, and Government of India has permitted us to manage the country code top level domain that is known as .in and .bharat, and I am very happy to say that .in is one of the fastest growing domain in Asia, and we hope that we should be able to cross China soon. And in 2013, Government of India has also permitted us to operate National Internet Registry, which is supposed to give IPv4 and IPv6 to the internet community in the country. And right now the growth in internet NIR is around 33 to 35%, which is a very sound growth. Right now, when 5G is coming, the concern with all of us is the data security and data sovereignty. The discussions are going on in the newspapers, in various platforms, like we are discussing today, in the government offices and in private offices, and wherever the things are there. There are new applications and technologies which are getting emerging in data security and network security. We have DNS, which provide the resolution to the internet users. And now the technologies like DOH, DOT, and also the DANE technology, they are now under test at the world level. And once they are available to all of us, I hope that when we are sending information or receiving information using website or sending emails, receiving emails, nobody should be able to intervene in those communications, and we hope that all the data which we are worried today will get secured, especially the financial data. 5G is going to a promising technology for all of us because the technological companies and the government are trying that high speed should be clubbed along with the data security and the confidence level which we are going to have. We hope that industries like financial sector, agriculture sector, and telecom sector should get a lot of boost by 5G. So this is what initial thoughts I have and I want to share on 5G. Sharad?
Yeah. Thanks, Mr. Jain. Now, I'd like to bring Mr. Ankur Malhotra and get his views on the cloud adoption in the last year and what does the future look like in this year or in the coming years and months.
All right. Thank you, Sharad, and a very warm welcome to everyone here today. It's great to see all of us coming together on a common platform after so long, and in fact, it seems unimaginable till a few months back. I believe Convergence India and Smart Cities has given us a great opportunity to interact and exchange ideas on a common platform. So just to give you a brief background about us, Mazars is an independent, integrated organization, and we advise clients on a range of issues which includes assurance, tax and advisory, as well as issues related to market entry, industry assessment, financial outlook and many more. We have been closely working with the Exhibition India Group to conceptualize a range of white papers to examine the extent of best practices across digitization and smart cities. This time we are delighted to present to you our report titled Where is My Cloud?, which examines the growth of cloud computing technology and recommends best practices for cloud adoption. As we all know, the nature of work has completely shifted, especially in last 1 year, wherein remote working and hybrid work environment has become a new norm. While cloud computing has been making its way into India and global periphery for a number of years, its extent of dissemination has actually gained new wings post-pandemic. The Indian cloud market, which currently stood at around USD 2.5 billion, has a potential to grow multifold. Within this, SMBs are the one which we will become catalyst to growth. At the same time, we also understand that the journey upwards, which is towards the cloud, is not that simple. Cloud migration is a big move, which involves every business function actually, and not just IT, to bring up issues like data privacy, confidentiality, accessibility, interoperability, regulatory compliance, and a lot more. So Mazars believe that the crux for any organization as it treats upon moving into Sky lies in finding its own cloud. This basically requires the firm to undertake the following fundamental steps. So we have listed down kind of 6 broad parameters which the firm should consider, wherein the first one should be that understand the need and purpose behind cloud migration across functions, identify the risk-reward profile of cloud and the underlying implications, select the right type of deployment model which suits your organization, embed the technological gateway into all aspects of business, connect people and processes, that is from ground to cloud, breathe freshness into the system from time to time, as it's going to be a ongoing exercise and not just a one-time activity wherein you just move all your data to cloud. So in short, we believe that key lies in crafting your own cloud strategy, to fit your organization culture, process, objectives with a view to make system a long-term value driver. Having said this, I would like to again thank Exhibition India Group, paid promotion organization, which is ITPO, for putting this expo together and encouraging a dynamic platform for participants to present, share, and exchange ideas. Special thanks for having Mazars as a knowledge partner and inviting us to present our overview and outlook on this cloud spree. Wishing Convergence India and Smart Cities Expos a very best. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Malhotra. I would request you to launch the report. And I believe every speaker has a copy, so we can do the launch together.
I think we should start.
Thanks, Mr. Malhotra, for the launch. Now, I would like to bring in Jim, and Jim, being an IoT expert for more than 2 decades of experience, I would like to get your views on how do you think the convergence of all technologies, how has it evolved in the last year or so, or in the last decade or so, and what the future holds for us?
Thank you, Sharad. It's great to join you virtually. It's wonderful to be with you. I'd rather be with you in person, but unfortunately that's still not possible. So thank you for that introduction. Yes, what I'd like to do is very interesting to listen to the speakers and the great strides and great steps that are being made in India. And what I'd like to do is bring a bit of an international or global perspective, and particularly stitch in some of the events of 2020 and 2021, because these are years that we will remember for the rest of our lives. From a technology and industry perspective, I think the consequence is that there's going to be a huge acceleration of the adoption of many of the emerging technologies which are live at the moment. I think adoption was rapid before the events of these last 2 years, but it's really accelerated. So I'm thinking things like artificial intelligence, cloud infrastructure came along just in time really for our pandemic. IoT, blockchain, many of the other technologies that have been mentioned this morning. But just unpicking behind that general acceleration, you've really got two impacts in terms of globalization, I think. One is an increasing globalization, the other one is an increasing fragmentation. So starting with globalization, everybody had to work from home. Everybody realized that worked, that remote working works. And not only that, but many things were forced to be undertaken remotely. Things that really, historically, people had wanted to be physically present where they were doing their work. So many things have been forced to be remote. So I'm thinking things like monitoring and maintenance in an industrial context. Quality assurance, that used to be very much an on-site job. And what we saw is people running, we had operations in the UK running quality assurance of production out in Asia. So completely remote. And of course, what key enablers for that are things like video cameras, the internet, as has been mentioned, the cloud capabilities, but also things like machine vision and artificial intelligence to help monitoring and filter out some of the more obvious problems at source before escalating to the remote person who's actually monitoring that. So what we've seen is an expansion of what could be classed as a service, an expansion of things that could be conducted remotely. So there's a very significant change on that side, and of course technology enables that very much. On the other side, we've seen fragmentation. or we will see fragmentation on the physical supply chain side. Now, physical supply chains have actually stood up very well in the past couple of years, or the past year or so. And a lot of that is to do with the technology that has been invested in those supply chains in terms of monitoring, in terms of managing managing stocks and inventory and distribution, and just knowing where goods are. And that's going to become more important, because I think one of the key consequences of the pandemic is going to be a fragmentation of supply chains, international supply chains. So many end using businesses are going to want diversity in their supply chains. They're not going to want single points of failure or significant supplies or business endangering levels of supplies coming from a single location, because if something goes wrong in that single location, their business stops. So they want much more diverse sourcing. So the supply chain becomes a network, and which is intended to be resilient to points of failure. And what that means is it becomes a much more complex optimization problem rather than the traditional linear problem that it's been. It's been in globalization up until now, and there's a significant opportunity there. Firstly for artificial intelligence to optimize that, but particularly to re-optimize it in the case of any problems or outages. And of course, that's all of that is enabled by IoT extending the reach of monitoring, and we have some new technologies coming along there. You've got 5G's been mentioned, and there are a couple of sides to that. So the first side of that is low power, wide area type connectivity, which really pushes the monitoring out into the field, into places which couldn't previously have been monitored, with very long battery lives, long coverage. So you can deploy sensors and leave them places, and it's much cheaper. You can actually monitor individual packages as they're being sent through a postal system, and there are solutions for that kind of thing coming live now to track an individual parcel, and when that parcel's opened, it tears a connection, and the person who sent it knows it's been delivered to the place it should be. So that kind of monitoring comes about. On the flip side of 5G, you're enabling private networks, particularly in companies, and what you're enabling there is things like better inventory management, dynamic management of inventory, and configuration of manufacturing spaces, dynamic flows of things being manufactured within a single site, and flipping between different products being made depending on what's coming through a supply chain. And of course, it's also being pushed out into the field as you have asset as a service, EPS as a service, remote monitoring and maintenance. So what's happening is the supply chain is being pushed right out into the field. So you've got a much more fragmented thing, which starts tracking. So the supply chain becomes more fragmented. It starts tracking earlier. It continues monitoring until later in the journey, and it's much more complex. So that's what's happening on the supply chain side. So we've had something of a perfect storm in the last couple of years, given the events that have happened. The fact that cloud infrastructure has been in place, and has been able to carry the load as we all fall back to remote working, and the fact that many of these new digital transformation technologies have come along, and are available to support the new way of working that we have had to adopt. It has been a perfect storm, but the result is a massive acceleration of digital transformation, and both of the impacts that I outlined here, the increasing globalization of services and the increasing fragmentation of physical supply chains. I think both of these are very significant opportunities for India, and it was great to hear some of the things mentioned earlier. So Dr. Rai of STPI mentioned blockchain center of excellence, artificial intelligence, computer vision, Industry 4.0. Sri Gar mentioned the technical incubation hubs. These are exactly the right things to be doing to enable addressing those opportunities of globalization of services, and I think to a great extent all the technologies that we have are emerging in step. I would say that probably The cloud is given at this point. Artificial intelligence is probably the most impactful, but artificial intelligence to a great extent depends on IoT and information gleaned from IoT, which is becoming ever more granular and ever more complete. And I think blockchain will be particularly important, particularly in supply chains, and of course 5G and LPWA. But all of these things are evolving in step. And I think that these technologies, the investments that India is making in these centers of excellence, and the changing dynamics at a global level, I think they all represent a huge opportunity for India.
Thanks, Jim, for your views. And I think you rightly pointed about the supply chain being resilient and how we can use all technologies, AI, ML, blockchain, to make it more efficient and transparent. Now, at this point in time, I would like to bring in Dr. Bhatnagar and get his views on the new, the government has liberalized geospatial policy, right? So what does it hold, or what does it mean for startups or businesses? How does it unlock potential with respect to mobility, transportation, logistics and all?
So, first of all, thank you, Sharad, for inviting me for this question, as well as, Convergence India. It is after a year or more, we are all sitting together and having these kind of conferences. So Sharad, before I answer your question specifically, let me just, there were some notes that were given to me by the Convergence. So I really want to share some of the things which I want to share with the audience here. First, there was a thought for the emerging technology. Are we getting into a regular, consistent change? So, whenever I think of these kind of questions, I try to take people to when was the first revolution started. So 1800s was the first one, revolution, the industrial revolution started. The second one was in 1990s when the communication and the internet revolution started. And the third revolution is now, when we are going through the IoT and the industries are merging together and service industries coming up and so on and so forth. That means the first revolution took place from the mankind started in the earth, on the earth. It took 11,000 years. The second took 150 years and the third one took 25. So the human brain is maturing, and every time we are having some new revolutions. And if you start seeing in the last 5 years, 5 years back we were talking about Internet of Things, then we started talking about AI, now we are talking about blockchain. So this is a consistent change that we are going to keep on getting new and new technologies. So as Dr. Rai just mentioned, that we started with the AI COE, now we are starting with the blockchain COE. So here the organization should be ready for a new COE starting something next year. Because the human mind is maturing. Our challenges are different and our requirement for new solution to solve those challenges are different. So this is going to be a consistent change that will keep on happening. And the another thing was, who will lead? Every day there will be a new leader. For every industry, there will be a new thing that will start happening. There was another thought which was coming because I am coming from the industry. I am not from a policy making or a government organization, but I am from an organization which is delivering solutions and services to all industries and enterprises in the digital space. Okay, whether it's IoT or something. I'm personally written a book on IoT and managing number of other things. But when I start thinking about the implementation and especially post-pandemic, okay. So when I started this organization called Aries Communication, which is IoT-based company in around 5 years back, we are a 2-decade-old company in Silicon Valley, a technology IoT company. I did 100 pilots for manufacturing companies. None of them got into a project. 100 pilots, all successful, but none of them got into a project because there was no return on investment. But pandemic stopped all manufacturing plants. Okay. Now all those hundreds are giving me a call. How can they start implementation? Okay. So the adoption because of pandemic will be much higher because people have realized that unless they can manage their things remotely, they will not be able to survive. The lockdown will kill them if they won't be able to do something in remotely. So whether you're going to have 2 or 3 robots, if you are small SME, so that in case of a worst case scenario, you have no one to pull the raw material to the machine. You'll have some robots there, but you need that technology to ensure that the business continuity is there. the first adopter of digital technologies were banks. And slowly, the utility and then the travel and logistics and then the automotive started. But unfortunately, the healthcare industry was so much regulated that, and not only when they were regulated, the second point was the commercial model, how the doctor and the hospital will get paid if it's a remote monitoring. Those kind of commercial models were not in place. But the pandemic forced them to come out with these kind of commercial models. And the regulators had to work whether telemedicine is now allowed. And so many other things came from the government of India. As a result, the next revolution will happen in the healthcare industry as per the digital or the IoT adoption is concerned. I already mentioned about the manufacturing example where the 100 of the pilots didn't move into a project for me. Okay, and now everybody is talking. So the manufacturing, whether we keep on calling IoT 4.0, in India we call it Samarth Udyog, because we are talking about the MSME sector. Okay, so the companies like Tata's and Mahindras, they will be able to implement on their own, but the MSME requires some kind of support, and that's where the Samarth Udyog is going on with the Ministry of MSME. And the last point is definitely on the skill employment. The skill set is not available. We keep on talking about many things, but till the time the industry, academia and the policy makers are going to join hands, the skill will remain a major problem. Now, specifically on the startup community, I again give you the time when this first revolution started. We were under the British rule. They never told us that there is an industry coming in Nottingham and all the Charkhawala will lose their jobs. Okay, and they all lost their jobs. But in the second revolution, we had our own government. They all worked, tried to do whatever best can happen. And today, as Dr. Rai just mentioned, 160 billion US dollar worth of IT industry, 4-point-something million skilled jobs. They are the result of that second revolution. The government of India worked at that time, and we created India as the largest system integrator of the world. Okay, but during that time, we didn't provide the infrastructure, we didn't provide the opportunity for the entrepreneurial mind to make unicorns. They all left to the Silicon Valley and many other parts of the world. And today's Microsoft, Twitter, LinkedIn, Google, Facebook, you will see all the Indians who have traveled during that second revolution time to the United States and created those unicorns. But today, these kind of policies which you just mentioned and allowing that kind of skill India, smart startup India, stand up India, and the amount of investment the government is doing, this government has just shown how can you create those entrepreneurs, those leaders, and give them an environment to invest and work and create those unicorns. The 11, 12 unicorns which have created in the last few years is an example of how we are working on it. So I'm very hopeful that these kind of opportunities which the government is giving and the work which has been done, which really help the startup community in India. One thing which I just want to mention, our challenges are very different. And I keep on giving this kind of example to many of my colleagues in the industry. I went to a municipal commissioner and telling him about the smart city initiative. How can we do this? How can we do that? After getting irritated from my presentation, he said, Dr. Bhatnagar, there are so many mosquitoes in my city and people are dying because of dengue. Okay. I have very limited resources to send people to throw these medicines to kill those mosquitoes and save my people. I need a solution for this. Can you do it? If you can do it, then stay. Otherwise, please go. You are wasting my time. Okay. So the answer to this was, I had no answer to that. But I went to IIT Hyderabad, worked with the students there. They had created a pest density sensor. Okay. And they were able to change it to a insect density sensor, which will be able to tell what is the density of insects. Okay. And then I went to the commissioner again. I said, sir, I have a sensor for you. You can put it into 10 places. You will be able to get a data. And hopefully, we will be able to save lives of people dying because of dengue in our city. Okay. We were able to do that pilot. So our challenges are very different. Our problems are very different. And we need to find solutions for our problems through the way we can work. So we can use the technology developed in the Western world, but their immediate utilization might not be here for us, and we have to change ourselves, change things for us. A major focus on R&D for India will be a really important step, Sharad, for us to find solutions for our own problems. That's all from my side. If you have any further questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Dr. Bhatnagar. Now, let me come to Mr. Sanjay Kumar and get your views on especially the kind of push the government is giving to all the manufacturing industries, electronics, IT, through production link incentives. In the union budget, more than 1.97 lakh crores have been sanctioned. So what's your view? How are we seeing the adoption with respect to manufacturing, and what can be done to make India more self-sufficient or Atmanirbhar, sir?
Hello? Hello? Am I audible? Yeah. Thank you, Sharad. Very good morning to all of you, and thank you, sponsors, for giving me this opportunity. On behalf of TCIL, I would like to thank the organizers and everyone else here for being present. The topic that we have is the changing landscape of emerging technologies, and Sharad has put further on top of it about the manufacturing and Atmanirbhar part of it. See, like Dr. Bhatnagar just said, technologies are going to be emerging every now and then, and their landscapes are going to change every time. Now it is we as human beings, we have to see how much to adopt, when to adopt, and to what extent the technologies need to be adopted in a cost-effective manner. Now, between the policy makers that we have here and the manufacturers and the ultimate beneficiaries as a part of citizens of the country, we at TCIL are the project implementing bodies. We actually implement the project from concept to commissioning, and in these emerging technologies where, besides we typically call roti, kapda or makan, food, shelter and clothing, we have a fourth need, which is the internet availability or the Wi-Fi or the communication that we should have. Today that has become the basic need. Now 5G as a latest mobile communication technology, it is at the doorsteps of ours where tests are being conducted, and we are implementing 4G in many parts of the country still. So lot of use cases which are specific to 5G, specific to Indian environment is something that we have to see. I was in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona in 2019, where we saw a live surgery using 5G with doctors sitting in the remote part of the country, and the surgeon is operating on the patient with advice of the doctor as to what to do, when to do, and to what extent the surgery needs to be done. So some of the live cases in 5G are there, but implementing that and creating the telecom infrastructure, that is where TCIL comes in. So when it comes to 5G, we have a lot of small cells which needs to be created, and then the fiberization of each of those small cells to the data center at the back. We are also looking into the upgradation or creation of the data center. Couple of projects that we are doing for data center maintenance and data center creation for BSNL. We are also looking into rural and urban divide to have the fiber connectivity in all the rural areas in the state of Andhra and Telangana. We are looking into the monitoring business for this fiber until the rural villages in the state of Kerala, Maharashtra, and Gujarat. So when it comes to really creating the infrastructure, be it in terms of satellite in the northeast or in terms of the fiber towards the rural villages or to the ring or radio or microwave, you can see TCIL's place there. Creating of smart cities where we are going to have millions of sensors in a per square kilometer of area. We have a lot of work there, and with 5G bringing in as a transport media for high bandwidth, low latency and faster data rates,
we will have a lot of these, upcoming technologies like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and augmented reality, where we are working. On the manufacturing side, of course, TCL per se is not a manufacturer of the equipment, but we are in constant touch with the manufacturers. Like Mr. Jain said, tests are going on for 5G. Similarly, for the networking components and for the data center, highly efficient computing devices and large storages. So we are in touch with them, and our aim always is to have a cost optimum solution to the client, be it for the blockchain or using the SD-WAN technologies. So close contact with the manufacturers to make cost-effective solutions implementable in difficult terrains. That is what our expertise is. And we thank Convergence India Expo, and we look forward for opportunities to work together with various knowledge partners and like-minded enterprises to implement such projects both in India and abroad. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Sanjay, for your views. Now, I would like to bring in Saurabh Gaurji and get his views on the skill development part, because we all agree that we're talking about emerging technologies, but we still have that skill gap. How are we moving in that direction, and what MeitY is doing about it with AI mission and all that?
Yeah, thank you for bringing this up. This is a very important part which, if we neglect, we'll be suffering a huge deal in the long run. I believe lots of speakers here talked about industrial revolution 1, 2, 3, 4, and what does the emerging technology mean for the emerging world, in the sense that what are we looking at, job augmentation, or are we looking at a severe job loss, and how prepared are we as a society to be able to embrace the future that lies ahead of us. We in the ministry are very cognizant of the fact that there is a tremendous amount of upskilling and reskilling which is required to live up to the challenges and to ensure that there is rapid adoption of AI and other artifacts of emerging technologies. There is a very strong future skills program that the ministry does in association with NASSCOM, where we have set a target of almost 1 million people whose skills should be upgraded in the private sector. And NASSCOM has been running these programs in association with not just the big companies, but also mid-sized companies, where there is focus on giving them skills. First of all, doing a evaluation of what kind of skill sets are available with the companies, and then reskilling them, whether it is in blockchain or in AI ML or in computer vision, or whichever is the business case which is available for them. Apart from that also, there is strong need for skilling in the public sector, and starting from the top echelons of the government, we have, with the Principal Scientific Advisor's Office, running programs for senior bureaucrats on the emerging technologies. There have been programs run for joint secretaries and directors to Government of India. Similarly, we have target for 10,000 people within government in the public sector to be trained on the emerging technologies, so that while government is enabler for these, it is also probably in certain extent through the different bodies like STPI or like our centers of excellence, it is an investor, or through our funds of funds. We have an electronics development fund, we will soon have a digital product development fund. We are becoming an investor in these developments. We are also going to play the role of regulator. But apart from that, as users and consumers of emerging technologies, how prepared are we to live up to that, to be able to consume them effectively, is something that is on the top of the agenda. So national program on AI, which I expect to come out, say, in a month's time, it will have a very strong component of skilling, again being reiterated, and a national center for AI, which will be engaged in the skilling program which will take lead in this effort.
Thank you, Mr. Gaur. Now, I would like to bring in Dr. Rai and get his views on the next generation incubation scheme by STPI and METI, and how are we driving that?
The next generation incubation scheme, which I just spoke about, was launched by Government of India, Ministry of Electronics and IT, which we are implementing right now, is to tap the talent from tier 2 and tier 3 cities of this country, the smaller towns of this country. The idea was that if we could sensitize, create awareness, mentor them, and could take them through the screening process, challenge process, a great amount of idea can be tapped from them, and that is why this Chunauti program, absolutely to a challenge hunt program for the NGIS scheme was launched. With the response that we had during this pandemic caused lockdown itself, about 1800 entries we received. The entire screening process was held at various places, at various occasions. And finally, we have just recently screened in 44 successful young boys and girls with very innovative ideas. These ideas are around solving problem in medtech, health tech, e-governance, linguistic issues of this country, logistics, and all these sectors which are very emerging. It's all about using blockchain technologies, IoT, AI, animation, AR, VR, and all. So what we have witnessed is that a great amount of ideation has gone into the people in smaller towns. A great kind of amount of sensitization has happened, and very innovative ideas have come up to validate the kind of assumption that ministry had, that young boys and girls of smaller towns who are actually encountering problem every day, whether it is agriculture, environmental affairs, whether health issues, rural technology, education and all. And therefore the kind of solutions that are coming, and they will be further incubated at various STPI COEs all across the country. The kind of incentive that have been offered under this NGIS program is a seed capital up to 25 lakh rupees, stipend to the founders with 10,000 rupees a month for another 6 months for 3 founders of the startup. And therefore, most importantly, apart from this financial incentive, apart from access to the lab that they will have, apart from the services offered by MSS that they will be having, most importantly, they are being mentored by the experienced hand from IT industry of India, which we have just gathered from our own efforts. And therefore, the people who are engaged in this Chunauti program, who are actually monitoring the implementation of this NGIS program at ground, are very, very encouraged. And we hope that this very program is going to give us a very tremendous result, a very transformatory outcome of this process.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Rai, for talking about Chunauti, and because it's necessary to expand the ecosystem to tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So we have 10 minutes left, and I would like to open this session for Q&A, and anyone in the audience, if you have any questions, you can put to the panel.
Hi, so my question is regarding blockchain and cryptocurrency in general, because I'm a very active crypto investor, and we've been hearing about a possible ban on cryptocurrency and the emergence of RBI's own digital currency, which could possibly change the way how fiat currency works for our country. So regarding that, obviously cryptocurrency can play a big role in wealth creation in the long run in India because of the expected returns and how the underlying technology can be helped in all of government's aspects, from supply chain to the government's IT infrastructure in general. So I would like to get your views on how India could sort of emerge a leader in cryptocurrency, and how these fintech startups such as maybe BitBNS or WazirX can really help create jobs and in fact accelerate the $5 trillion economy in the next 10 years, considering the huge potential of a Bitcoin reaching $1 billion in the next 10 years. So I'd like to get your view on cryptocurrency and the growth potential in our country. Thank you.
Mr. Goy, would you like to take that?
Let's hear from industry views first.
Okay. So So let me start first, and I think there is enough statement by the finance minister, and she has categorically stated that the government is taking a more collaborative stand, and all views will be taken into consideration. There's a bill pending in the parliament, so we should look forward to the bill, get to see the contours of the bill, and I strongly believe that the government has an open mind, and we'll look forward to having a regulation which will promote adoption of cryptocurrency, especially for fintech and payments. But a regulation is needed because it's necessary to have the right regulation so that you can keep bad actors at play. Anyone in the panel would like to share their views on this question, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right.
I think what I understand is that you want to understand how the blockchain as a technology is going to impact the technological evolution and development in the country. I focus my discussion on the business which we are doing. We are controlling .in domain and .bharat domain. Blockchain technology is nothing but a distributed technology where the processing will be available in different locations, maybe in the different locations in the world. Today, when anybody is processing any information, seeking or receiving any information, a IP address gets associated with the request, which goes with URL and then search through DNS at the location. With the blockchain technology which is going to come, the IP addresses will get eliminated by crypto key, and the crypto key is going to take you to the destination. Now, along with the efficiency and cost effectiveness of the blockchain, there are several questions which has been raised. Is the security aspect of the blockchain, whether the security of the country is assured with the implementation of this particular technology, because let me tell you that in case the defense of the country is concerned, it is the government's sovereign responsibility to keep the defense. But there are questions being raised on this technology, whether the lawful interception agencies can be intervened and can understand whether the people who are fraudulent people, who are anti-government people, what activity they are doing, can we protect those people and can we protect all of us from that particular thing. I personally feel that Government of India has started discussions on the cryptocurrency also, that I think all of us are aware, and it is not that they are saying no, but they are saying that very specific to India, what should be the norms for evolution of currency has to be thought of, and in case everything is good and safe, we may implement a cryptocurrency in a different way, different nomenclature or different methodology. That is what my update. Thank you.
Thanks. Do we have any more questions?
I think Jim wants to answer this. Sharad?
Yes, if I can chip in very quickly, I know we're short on time, but blockchain is a confused technology. Blockchain is actually a subset of a group of technologies called distributed ledger. So distributed ledgers exist in permissionless and centralized and decentralized versions, and blockchain is a decentralized, permissionless distributed ledger. And what's happened is the market has taken the name blockchain and applied it to the whole set of technologies, distributed ledger, but they're actually quite different things. So blockchain, the financial version of it, is not a lot of use in an industrial context. And the distributed ledger, the superset of blockchain, can actually be extremely useful, particularly in decentralized finance, settlement of complex financial instruments, and tracking through a supply chain by effectively providing abstraction there. But they're quite different things.
Right. And just to add to Jim's point, I think since RBI is talking about central bank digital currency, and India is part of G20, which has a mandate to work on cross-border payments. So central bank digital currencies can make cross-border payments more efficient, more transparent, and affordable even to the last mile. So these are some of the very good use cases where both digital currencies and blockchain can be put together.
Just to conclude from my side, that is where I would like to bring out the difference between, and probably the point that you're asking, what is government thinking about cryptocurrency, and is that also there is, while we debate about cryptocurrency, there is a thought about what is the kind of adoption of digital currency that can happen, and these are two separate things, and what kind of efficiencies can be brought in the settlement mechanisms or in the complex transactions that are happening to bring efficiencies in the system. So that is definitely a thought on the table while we discuss about whether cryptocurrency is a store for value of money or as an instrument for transaction can be utilized or not. That is a separate discussion altogether.
Thanks, Mr. Gaur. So with this, I would like to conclude today's session on changing landscape of emerging technologies and right, and if possible, can we have maybe one line of closing remarks from all the speakers? Right, one line of closing remarks.
Yeah. So from my side, I believe that you see this COVID is like another Y2K movement for India and for Indian software and Indian IT industry and in manufacturing sector also. And I believe we have to make the best use of that. Just like in Y2K, we had emergence of very strong services and technology integration companies, big companies. I believe there is this opportunity for mid-size companies, MSMEs also to come to fore, and there is a very strong effort from government also to support this entire ecosystem. And we look forward to making this decade from now onwards a decade for very strong growth for Indian IT sector and Indian manufacturing sector.
Thank you, Mr. Gaur. Right.
My final comments, I can say that yes, technologies, a lot of technologies, promising technologies are being presented to us, but to make them really implementable and giving benefits to the people, there should be a greater cooperation between government and private sector. And we hope that whatever we have achieved in telecom revolution and in IT revolution in the last 20 years, we should be able to repeat the same story in artificial intelligence and IoT new areas which are emerging. The second comment which I want to say is that for implementation of all these technologies, you need a great skill set. The skill set is required at the academia. All the courses which are there in colleges and schools should include the new technology, and children should be able to get familiarization with the technology which is happening. Similarly, we want to upgrade the skill of the working force already which is available in the industry. I think there is a lot of cooperation which is required again in the private as well as in government agencies. I want to tell you that NIXI has planned to start teaching and upscaling the people of India on internet protocol addresses IPv4 and IPv6 through online education, and I hope the similar program should be taken up with other organizations also. Thank you.
For me, emerging technologies, they will keep emerging. I think what we should focus on is implementation part of it, where it is needed the most in a very cost-effective manner. And once implemented, we should still be the masters of the technology rather than the slaves. Gone are the days where we have to stick only to the mobile and get everything. Let mobile be used where it is needed the most, rather than doing all sorts of superfluous activities on these benefits that we get from emerging technologies. So cost-effective implementation where it is needed, that's a mantra that I would like to give. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Sanjay. Can we start from Mr. Ankur for closing remarks, followed by Dr. Bhatnagar?
Emerging technology, and at least we should, now, while we cannot try to avoid such pandemics in future, but we can surely learn and at least be prepared for such adversities using good technology in hand.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Ankur.
So, Sharan, the last comment from my side. If people want to maintain themselves as productive and retain their jobs, okay, they must continue unskill themselves and reskill themselves. If they won't, they'll lose their job, because the emerging world, emerging technologies will not let them work on the same technology which they know right now. So unskill and reskill.
Yeah, so learn and unlearn. Dr. Rai, your closing remarks, please.
My comment would be that as far as this emerging technologies are concerned, India is going to benefit most from it because of obvious strength that we had. And as I said in past that the quick emergence of Indian startup ecosystem is one testimony of how Indian brains, young boys and girls are trying their hands with the emerging technology. And therefore I can say with all confidence that India is going to lead here onward the rest of the world in terms of technology products, product creation and capitalizing on this emerging technology. Obviously because we have most of the talent here on our soil and we have so many problems to be solved by young boys and girls. Thereby we will be creating disruptive world-class product which will be emulated and followed by the rest of the world.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Rai, and I would like to thank all the speakers and all the attendees for joining the session and speakers especially for sharing their views and thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, the speakers. And I would like to request Mr. Sarat Chandra, our moderator, to give out mementos to our speakers, please. Dr. Omkar Rai, Director General, Software Technology Park of India. Thank you, sir, for your presence. Shri Saurav Garg, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Thank you for your presence, sir. Mr. Anil Kumar Jain, CEO, National Internet Exchange of India. Our distinguished speakers, Dr. Rishi Bhatnagar, President, Aeris Communication. Mr. Sanjay Bharti Kumar, Group GM, TCIL. Mr. Ankur Malhotra, Director, Mazars. You know, we don't have Jim Morris between us. I wish we had him. We could have given him a memento personally to him. So anyway, thanks to him anyway. Yeah, we could have forced Jim to come and this thing. May I request Aarti from Exhibitions India Group to give out a memento to our moderator, Mr. Sarat Chandra. So nice of you, sir, to moderate this session. It was a lovely experience for everybody. Please, can we have a loud clap, please? We are all going to serve tea, so please clap. Thank you, sir.